I didn't think much of the empty road that night. The highway stretched out before me like a never-ending ribbon, the kind that always seemed to swallow up the headlights of my rig. It was around 2 a.m., somewhere in the middle of nowhere, between Kansas and Missouri. I was doing the usual long-haul shift, keeping my eyes glued to the road and trying not to think about how lonely it felt out here. Just me, the truck, and the dark stretch of asphalt. My name's Jack, and I've been a trucker for years. You get used to the silence after a while, but it's not the silence that gets you. It's what might be lurking in it. I was about 5 miles from a small town when my CB radio crackled. At first, I thought it was just static, but then a voice came through, rough and breathy, like someone was struggling to speak. Jack. Jack, can you hear me? I froze, gripping the wheel tighter. I wasn't expecting any calls. The dispatch had already signed off for the night, and the few truckers I'd passed had been silent. I double-checked the radio. No one else should have been on this channel. Who is this? I asked, my voice coming out more tense than I wanted. The voice on the other end didn't answer right away. It took a moment for it to return, and when it did, it sounded even more panicked. I'm stuck. I need help. I don't know where I am. It's dark, and something's out there. The words sent a chill through me, but I didn't let it show. This kind of thing happens sometimes, random calls from people who'd gotten lost or were just trying to mess with you. But something about the urgency in that voice kept me on edge. Where are you? I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. I don't know. The static on the line made it hard to hear the rest. I could barely make out the last part. Road, dark, behind me. Behind? My thoughts raced. If this guy was really out there, he might be in trouble. I checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone tailing me. Nothing. Just the empty road stretching back into the night. Listen, I'm gonna keep driving forward. Try to give me some more details, and I'll find you, I said, trying to reassure him. There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, frantic now. You don't understand. It's following me. Before I could respond, the radio went dead. Silence. I stared at the screen of my CB, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure what had just happened. Was this some sick joke, or was something really out there? I shook my head, trying to push the thought out of my mind. I wasn't one to panic. But that voice. It was like a gut feeling, deep down, that told me I needed to pay attention. I pushed the pedal down, the truck speeding up as I tried to shake the unease creeping through me. Whatever it was, I was about to find out. I just hoped I wasn't too late. I kept my foot heavy on the gas, my eyes darting nervously between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. The night was still, but the more I thought about that voice, the more unsettled I became. There was something off about it, something too real, too raw. The stretch of highway was just as empty as before, no sign of another vehicle in sight. But it was hard to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I didn't know why, but I could swear I saw something moving in the distance every time I glanced in the rearview mirror. Just shadows, too quick to make out, but enough to make my pulse spike. I didn't want to believe it, but the possibility that someone, was following me began to gnaw at me. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, maybe the isolation getting to me. But then the radio crackled again. Jack. Jack, you there? It was the same voice. But this time, there was no panic. Just a low, breathy whisper. Where are you? I said, keeping my voice steady, though my grip tightened on the wheel. Close. I'm close. The static buzzed in my ear, and I nearly dropped the radio, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure whether to stop or keep going. Every part of me screamed to ignore the call and drive faster. But there was this feeling, this sickening sense of something pressing in from all sides. That voice had sounded too real. Too desperate. It was hard to tell whether I was making a mistake, but the thought of leaving someone stranded out here was worse than whatever this could be. I flicked on my lights, scanning the road ahead once more. The truck rumbled beneath me as the engine roared into the night. Nothing. Just miles of darkness and the soft hum of the tires on asphalt. Then, something caught my eye. In the distance, down the road, I saw what looked like a figure standing by the side of the highway. I squinted, not sure if I was seeing things. I thought about slowing down, pulling over to see if it was the guy from the radio, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way the figure stood so still, too still for a person. I hesitated, unsure. But as I got closer, it became clear, whoever it was wasn't just standing there. They were facing away from me, looking at something in the darkness. That's when I saw it. Something moving behind the figure. Something big. Dark. It was hard to make out exactly what it was, but whatever it wasn't human. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as a feeling of dread swept over me. I slammed on the brakes, the truck screeching to a halt, and the figure didn't move. Neither did the thing in the dark. The headlights of the rig bathed the road in harsh light, but I still couldn't see what it was clearly. All I could do was watch, frozen, as the figure stayed where it was, like it was waiting for something. Then came the radio again. "Jack, it's too late." The voice sounded different now. Calm, almost cold. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct in me screamed to drive off, to get as far away from whatever that thing was, but my curiosity, and maybe something darker, kept me there. "Who's there?" I shouted into the radio, my voice desperate. The figure turned. Slowly. The movement was unnatural. Jerky. Like it wasn't sure how to move at all. It didn't speak, but I could hear it in my head, faintly. "It's waiting for you." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't even have time to react before the thing in the dark leapt from behind the figure, moving with a speed that no human should have been able to. The last thing I saw before I slammed my foot onto the gas was a pair of glowing eyes. They didn't belong to anything that should have been out there. I didn't look back. I didn't look back. But I felt it. I could feel it behind me, just out of sight, as the truck barreled down the highway. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the hum of the engine over it. My hands were white-knuckled on the wheel, the sweat making my palms slick. I could see the road ahead, the lines blurring under my headlights, but I kept checking the mirrors. Every few seconds. I couldn't help it. Nothing. At least, that's what I told myself. Nothing in the mirrors, nothing to see. But I felt it. That weight. That pressure. Something was following me. I sped up, the truck roaring, pushing past 75 miles an hour, but the sensation didn't let go. It was like an invisible hand pressing down on my chest. Every so often, I would catch a glimpse of something, just a flash of movement, something out of place. Shadows in the darkness. Too fast, too strange to be human. I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind, or if something really was out there. But there was a voice in my head, a voice that wouldn't shut up. It told me to stop. It told me to look behind me. And against every bit of common sense I had left, I did it. I glanced in the mirror. For a second, all I saw was the emptiness of the road stretching back into the blackness. Then, just as I was about to look away, I saw it. A figure in the distance, standing still on the highway, its arms hanging limply at its sides. It looked too familiar, too much like the one I'd seen earlier. But this time, it was closer. Much closer. It was right behind me. I could see its shape clearly now, pale, almost white, like it had been drained of color. The eyes. The eyes were glowing again, just like before. But now, they were watching me. I swerved, my hands jerking the wheel, fighting against the panic that clawed at my throat. I wasn't sure what I was doing anymore. The truck veered sharply, the tires screeching as I fought to keep control. But I didn't have time to think. The figure moved, faster than I could comprehend, and it slammed into the side of my rig. I heard the impact, a sickening crunch that vibrated through the whole truck. My body jerked against the seatbelt, the truck tilting as though something massive had slammed into it. I hit the brakes hard, but the momentum kept pushing us forward. For a moment, the world spun in chaos, and all I could do was hold on and pray. I managed to bring the truck to a stop on the shoulder, my heart hammering in my chest. The world was eerily quiet again. Too quiet. I slowly unclipped my seatbelt, my body trembling. Every part of me screamed to get out of the truck, to run, but I knew better. You don't just run from something you can't even understand. I grabbed the flashlight, my hand shaking, and stepped out of the rig. The air was cold. Too cold. The dark seemed to press in from all sides, the faint hum of the truck's engine now the only sound breaking the stillness. I swung the flashlight around, sweeping the area, trying to find something. Anything. I froze. There was nothing. Except for one thing. A single, large footprint in the dirt by the side of the road. Deep, as if something heavy had been standing there. And the strangest thing? The footprint didn't look human. It was too wide, too distorted, like something was trying to mask its real form. I wasn't alone. I could feel it again, the eyes on me. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Slowly, impossibly slow, the figure from before stepped out of the darkness, its pale skin almost glowing in the weak light of my flashlight. The eyes, those glowing eyes, were locked onto me. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. It tilted its head, almost as if curious. It didn't move forward. It just stood there, staring. And then it spoke. "You shouldn't have come back, Jack." The voice. The same one from the radio. My blood ran cold. I had no words. No defense. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My legs were burning from the adrenaline, and my breath was ragged as I sprinted toward the truck, praying I could make it back before whatever that thing was decided to move again. The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the ground, but I didn't dare stop to pick it up. The beam of light faded, and the darkness around me felt like it was swallowing everything whole. I could hear it now. The sound of something moving behind me. Quiet at first, but growing louder, like something was gliding across the ground, keeping pace. It wasn't running, it wasn't even walking. It was just, there, closing in slowly, deliberately. My heart was slamming in my chest as I reached the door of the truck, yanking it open and jumping inside. I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the keys. My fingers were slick with sweat, but finally, I managed to start the engine. The truck roared to life, but I didn't wait to ease onto the gas. I slammed my foot down hard, the tires squealing as I peeled out onto the road. I glanced in the mirror. Nothing. Just the empty highway stretching out behind me. But I knew better than to feel safe. The feeling of being watched didn't go away. It never did. It hung in the air, like the oppressive weight of something that was still lurking just out of sight. I looked over at the empty passenger seat. The silence was unbearable. My mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts and fear. That voice, that thing out there, what was it? And why had it been following me? Why was it, waiting for me? I needed to get back to the main road, to get away from the dark, empty stretch of highway. So I kept driving. Faster now, weaving through the curves of the road, desperate to put as much distance between me and that thing as I could. But the road felt endless. Every mile felt like 1,000, and the weight in the air grew heavier. Then, the radio crackled again. Jack. I didn't want to hear it. I knew it was that voice again. I didn't care. But I couldn't stop myself from answering. "What do you want?" My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Too late, it's already inside." "Inside?" The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I glanced around. I didn't even know what it meant. Was it, in the truck? Was it waiting for me somewhere? Before I could think, a sudden, sharp knock sounded from the back of the truck. I froze. My blood went cold. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't some animal. The sound was distinct, like someone was knocking, tapping, trying to get in. I gripped the wheel tighter, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Nothing. The sound came again. Louder this time. A long, slow series of knocks, like something, or someone, was trying to get my attention. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Then, it came. The voice again, softer, but right there in my ear, like it was whispering directly into my mind. "Jack," the sound of the knock came again. And this time, it was followed by the unmistakable creak of something shifting in the back of the truck. I didn't look back. Not this time. I couldn't. I could feel the sweat pooling on my skin, cold and sticky, as I kept my foot pressed down on the gas, the truck roaring through the night. The knocking came again, louder now, and the whole truck shuddered, as if something heavy was moving in the back. I didn't know what it was, didn't want to know. But I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. I gripped the wheel tighter, my hands slick with sweat, trying to steady my breath, trying to stay calm. The dark highway stretched out ahead, endless, but I kept expecting something to leap out of the night. It was like the darkness itself had teeth, waiting to snap. The knocking stopped for a moment, and the silence was almost worse. The only sound was the hum of the truck's engine and the wind rushing past, but I knew something was wrong. Something was off. I kept checking the rearview mirror, my eyes darting to the back of the truck as if expecting to see something standing there, staring at me. But there was nothing. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it all. Maybe it was just exhaustion getting to me, the isolation of the road creeping in. Then I heard it. A scraping sound. Soft at first, but unmistakable. Something, or someone, was dragging across the floor of the truck, moving slowly but steadily. I didn't think. I didn't give myself the luxury of hesitation. I slammed my foot down on the brakes, the truck screeching to a halt in the middle of nowhere. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road ahead, but I didn't care about the road anymore. I threw the truck into park and jumped out before I even realized what I was doing. I grabbed the flashlight from the cab, the beam of light cutting through the night, and I rushed to the back of the truck. Every step felt like it took an eternity. The fear that gripped me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. My heart hammered in my chest, and every part of me screamed to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to know. I had to face whatever was in there. I reached the back of the truck, the air thick with tension. The sound of scraping had stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing. I took a deep breath and swung open the door. The light from the flashlight flickered as I peered inside. There was nothing at first. Just the usual cargo, boxes, equipment, the things I'd been hauling for hours. But then I saw it. A dark shape, crouched low to the ground, almost blending into the shadows. It wasn't human. The shape was too twisted, too wrong. Its limbs were long and gangly, unnaturally bent, and it moved with a jerky, unsettling fluidity, like it didn't know how to walk. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless surface where its head should have been. But I could feel its presence, like it was staring at me, even though there was nothing there. The flashlight flickered again, and for a split second, I thought I saw something in the shape's hands. Something long, thin, and glinting. A knife. Or something worse. The thing didn't move. It didn't make a sound. And then, in my mind, the voice came again, cold and distant, "It's inside now, Jack. It's here with you." I staggered back, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I slammed the truck door shut and jumped into the driver's seat. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I started the engine, my foot slamming on the gas again. The truck lurched forward, tearing down the road, the headlights cutting through the dark as I tried to outrun whatever was now inside. But it wasn't the road that scared me anymore. It was the feeling of something behind me, something close enough that I could almost hear its breath, feel its presence pressing in on me. I glanced at the rearview mirror again. There was nothing there. But the voice, that cold, twisted voice, whispered one last time, clear as day, "It's not over, Jack. It's only just begun." And that's when I realized. It wasn't just following me anymore. It was inside my head. I couldn't shake the feeling. The air in the truck felt thick now, suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was closing in around me. My eyes were wild, darting from the road to the mirrors, to the dashboard, searching for something, anything, that would make sense of what was happening. But everything felt wrong. Nothing was real anymore. Not the road, not the truck, not even me. I kept driving, my hands trembling on the wheel, but I wasn't going anywhere. The highway stretched on, an endless black ribbon, and the truck seemed to be stuck in place, like it was moving through a fog I couldn't see, but could feel pressing in on me. The faster I went, the slower the world seemed to get. My brain was foggy, my thoughts spinning in circles. And that voice, always there, whispering, crawling inside my mind. "It's not over, Jack. You're still in it. It's still with you." I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the noise startling me. The headache I'd been fighting all night flared, and I could feel the pressure building in my skull. My heart was pounding too hard now, each beat heavy and slow, like something was trying to break free from inside me. I forced my gaze back to the road. I had to keep moving. I had to outrun it. Outrun whatever had followed me. But then, in the corner of my eye, I saw it. It was like a shadow, but it wasn't on the road. It was hovering just outside the truck, just beyond the reach of my headlights. The edges of the shadow flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw a hand, no, fingers, clawing at the side of the truck, slowly dragging along the metal, leaving behind long, thin scratches. I froze. The world went silent, but the thrum of my pulse seemed to reverberate through the whole cab. My breath caught in my throat, and I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't look. But I had to look. I turned my head. Nothing. The shadow was gone. I exhaled sharply, almost laughing at myself, trying to convince myself that I had just imagined it. My mind was playing tricks on me. It had to be. But then, the lights on the dashboard flickered. The truck made a strange noise, like the engine was sputtering, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Everything stopped. The engine cut out. The truck rolled to a slow, shuddering halt. I tried to restart it. Nothing. The lights dimmed and went out, and the darkness closed in like it was alive. I felt a cold draft sweep through the cabin. My heart was pounding in my chest as I fought to keep my breathing steady. I checked the ignition. The key was still in place. I turned it again. Nothing. I reached for the door, but before I could open it, I felt it. Something wet and cold brushed against the back of my neck. My blood ran cold, and I froze. "It's here," I thought, the words clear as day in my mind. I didn't want to look. But I had no choice. My body moved on its own, my head turning slowly, almost unwillingly. And there it was. That thing. The pale figure from before, standing just outside the truck, its long, twisted limbs pressing against the window. Its glowing eyes were staring straight at me, unblinking, its face nothing more than a featureless, smooth surface. It wasn't just standing there. It was smiling. Or, was it? Its mouth wasn't a mouth, just a thin, jagged line that twisted like it was trying to form words. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The air felt like it was thick with static, like the truck itself was charged, ready to explode at any moment. The thing tilted its head, slow and deliberate, and for a moment, I thought I saw something else. Something behind it. A shape. A shape that wasn't quite human. A body, with pale, leathery skin stretched too tight over its bones. A second pair of eyes, glowing even brighter, and a mouth that split open wider than any human could manage. And then, the voice came again. Soft and sweet, like it was speaking directly into my ear, but I knew it wasn't real. It wasn't supposed to be real. It's inside you now, Jack. We're everywhere. We've always been here. That was the last straw. I kicked the door open, not caring anymore. I jumped out of the truck and bolted into the night. I didn't care where I went. I didn't care if it was toward the figure or further into the endless stretch of highway. I ran, my legs pumping, my heart pounding, but all I could hear was that voice, in my head, whispering. Laughing. And the thing, it was behind me. It was always behind me. I ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The darkness swallowed everything, the road, the sky, the world, except for the pounding of my own feet on the gravel and the ragged breath I couldn't control. The cold night air burned my lungs, but it wasn't enough to freeze the fear creeping up my spine. But I could feel it. I could feel it behind me, closing in. Not physically, no, it wasn't that. It was worse. It was in my mind. It was in my skin, my blood. That voice, always that voice, tugging at my thoughts like a string being pulled tighter and tighter. You can't run from us, Jack. We are already in you. In everything. I stumbled on the uneven ground, my legs weak, and I caught myself before I hit the dirt. I forced myself to stand, but my mind was spinning. Every part of me wanted to collapse. To give in. But there was no choice. There never was. I glanced around. The truck was far behind me now. The figures, were far behind me too, but I knew better than to think that meant I was safe. The road stretched out, endless, a black void under the cold glow of the stars, but all I could think about was the cold, wet feeling creeping up my neck. The air around me felt too thick, too heavy. I kept running, my muscles screaming in protest, but I couldn't stop. The fear was too great. I was running from something that wasn't just chasing me physically, but something that had already taken root in my mind. That thing outside the truck, those glowing eyes, whatever it was, it had gotten inside me. It had made its home in my thoughts, in my blood, in my very soul. And that realization, it hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't just following me. It was me. I wasn't sure how long I ran, or how far. The landscape didn't change, and the air didn't grow any less oppressive. It all felt like one endless loop, one constant stretch of darkness. But there was no escape from the gnawing, growing panic eating at the back of my mind. It was the feeling that, no matter how far I went, no matter how fast, it was already over. It had me. I stopped for a moment, gasping for air, my legs shaking beneath me. The sounds of my heavy breathing filled my ears, but then something else joined them. Faint at first, but unmistakable. The soft tapping of feet. Coming closer. I turned, my eyes wild, scanning the shadows. There was nothing. Just the highway. The same road that had been stretching out forever. But I knew it was there. I could feel it. The darkness, the weight, the thing that had been lurking all along. It was here. It was inside me. And then, I heard the voice again. Not through the radio this time, but inside my head, clear as day, as if it was right next to me. "You're still running, Jack. But we know who you are now." The ground beneath me seemed to shift, like the world was tilting, warping around me. The shadows twisted in unnatural shapes, reaching out to me, pulling me back toward them. My vision blurred, and for a split second, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A pair of glowing eyes, not from the truck, but from something inside the darkness. They were watching me, but I couldn't move. My body was frozen. I was too late. The figure stepped forward. The one from before, the pale shape, the twisted limbs, the empty face. But now, it was different. It was more than just a thing outside the truck. It was part of me now, in my mind, in my soul. It wasn't just following me anymore. It was me. It reached out with long, gangly fingers, and I couldn't scream. My throat was tight, my breath ragged, but no sound came. My body couldn't move, couldn't escape. "We are always here, Jack. Waiting. You never left." And as the fingers closed around me, pulling me into the dark, I realized something. There was never a road. There was never a truck. There was only the thing, and I had been its passenger all along. The world was silent. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the kind of silence that felt suffocating, like the air itself had thickened, making it impossible to breathe. My chest heaved, but no air filled my lungs. My vision was blurry, and I felt dizzy, like I was floating in a vast emptiness, suspended between two worlds. I didn't know if I was awake anymore. The feeling of the figure's fingers, long and cold, wrapping around my wrist, should have been terrifying, but it wasn't. It felt like an old, familiar presence. Something I had been waiting for. Something I had known would come. The figure pulled me into the dark. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. The darkness was everywhere now, swallowing the last bit of light, the last trace of the world I had known. And then, the voice came again. But this time, it wasn't in my head. It wasn't through the radio. It was everywhere. Inside me. Around me. As if the very air was vibrating with it. "You were never meant to run, Jack. You've always been ours." I closed my eyes, but the darkness didn't go away. It pressed in, thick and heavy, until I couldn't even feel my own body anymore. I was nothing but the voice, the presence, the endless feeling of being trapped in this place. There was no escape. There was no going back. And then I saw it. Not with my eyes, but with every sense I had left. A light. It was dim, flickering, but it cut through the blackness like a knife. It was a cold, pale light, and as I moved toward it, I realized something. The light was wrong. It wasn't warm. It didn't comfort me. It felt like an illusion, something designed to keep me moving, to keep me chasing after something I could never reach. But I had to follow it. There was no other choice. It was the only thing left. The light grew brighter as I got closer, but as I reached out for it, it dimmed. The farther I reached, the farther it seemed to move away, just out of my grasp. And the voice that had been haunting me, the one that had been inside me for so long, spoke again. "You don't need the light, Jack. You never did." I froze. The realization hit me all at once. The light wasn't a way out. It wasn't salvation. It was the trap. It was the illusion. The truth was, there was nothing left to save me. I had never been in control. I had been running from something that had already claimed me, from something I had brought with me all along. The dark shape that had been following me, the thing that had watched me, it wasn't some outside force. It wasn't a monster or a ghost. It was me. It was the part of me that had been slowly consuming me, feeding off my fear, my desperation. It had never been the road that had trapped me. It was my mind. My soul. "We are you, Jack. And you are us. I couldn't fight it anymore. The light faded completely. The darkness took over. And I understood now. The voice wasn't just a voice. It was the thing inside me, the thing that had always been there. The thing that had shaped every decision I made, every turn I took. It was my fear. My guilt. My weakness. I wasn't running from something. I was running from myself. And now, there was no escape. It was over. I felt it. The last shred of resistance I had, the last glimmer of who I was, finally slipped away, leaving me empty, hollow, like a shell of a person. There was no more fear, no more fight. There was only the darkness and the voice that had become part of me. Welcome home, Jack. I didn't know if I was still alive. The thought of it seemed so distant, so foreign. What was life anymore? What was this world I had been in before? The truck, the road, the hours spent in isolation, it was all just a distant memory now, something I could barely grasp. But then, what did it matter? The road had never really existed. None of it had. It was just a part of the game, a twisted little narrative that the thing inside me had woven. I looked around, but there was nothing. No road, no truck, no sky. Just a vast, empty void, as if all that had ever been was consumed, erased by the very presence that had chased me. I felt nothing. There was no light here, no sound, no pain, no joy, just an infinite, oppressive silence. You were always ours, Jack. You didn't choose this. We chose you. It was strange, in a way. I had always known there was something wrong, something deep down inside me, clawing at my thoughts. Something dark. But I had never fully understood it until now. It wasn't some external force. It wasn't some monster lurking in the shadows. No, the darkness was me. It had always been me. I had been running from myself, from the part of me that had always been there, waiting to take control. I had been so focused on the external horrors, the shadows and whispers, the things that seemed to follow me from the edges of the road. But now, in the nothingness, I realized the truth. I had never escaped. I had never outrun it. It had been inside me from the very beginning. The voice spoke again, quieter this time, but no less potent, no less terrifying. It's time to rest, Jack. We've been waiting for you. And just like that, the darkness consumed me. It didn't swallow me whole. It didn't tear me apart. It was a quiet, gentle sinking into nothingness. As if I had always belonged to this place. To this fate. To the thing that had been part of me all along. I understood then. There was no escape. No salvation. Just the void. Just the endless, suffocating silence. And I was no longer Jack. I was the thing. The voice. The darkness. And it had always been me.